Good afternoon, welcome to UK Column Live. It's the 21st of January 2014 and it's just about 2 minutes past 1. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth and it's just started raining.
It has. I'm afraid to say that it's cloudy, slightly rainy, and that's the forecast, although we think it may improve by Thursday. But
Wait and see.
There we go.
Yeah.
OK, well, we're going to kick off with an Express article where they were saying that there had been an attack on Nigel Farage, leader of the UKIP party, and apparently he was hit over the head with a placard at a protest. Now, our comment on this is, of course, if people can't get out there and give an opinion without being attacked or harassed or bullied, all of us lose. So we thought this was a perfect example of what should not be happening with any of the people involved in the movement around the British Constitution or lawful rebellion, etc. The aim of the game has got to be out there getting a message across in a peaceful way. But if I do a little bit of advertising here, the UK column being printed as we speak, and I'm going to encourage you to have a look at this article, which is Britain's, there we are, Britain's security services just compromised or home to agent provocateurs. What was very interesting with this article, and indeed other reports in the mainstream press, is they did not seem to have been doing much investigation to who the thugs were or why they did what they did. So it seems to us rather strange that Nigel Farage should be there and suddenly we've got violence. Where's it coming from? No investigation and no comment from the police, of course. And we couldn't resist, we're touching on the Lib Dem party at the moment. There are a number of different headlines. I believe that Lord Renaud is now out of the Lib Dems as an organisation. I think that is correct. But of course, we've got the bizarre situation where we've got Nick Clegg saying that he should apologise. And of course, he's saying, well, I'm not going to apologise because I haven't done anything wrong. So what have we got? Chaos.
Yeah, Clegg's really getting a battering this morning in the mainstream press today. Really getting a battering.
Well,
so,
at the end,
long may it continue.
At the end of the day, it wasn't one lady that came forward to say that she'd been abused or interfered, whatever the correct expression is. This was a number of different witnesses, and yet what have we seen coming into the mainstream media? Any transparency?
Exactly.
Not a lot. So welcome to Nick Clegg's Lib Dem party. Good place to be if you're a man, but presumably a little bit dodgy if you're a woman. Well, you've also picked up on the MPs on the subject of their expenses.
Yeah. A Commons committee has revealed that they have received complaints from MPs who believe they should be given more expenses for hotels and staff, especially those not entitled to taxpayer-funded second homes. Let's bear in mind that the basic salary for an MP is £66,396 per annum, plus the expenses that they already get. But some MPs are moaning they only get a few hours sleep if they return home late after a Commons sittings. Well, let's just remind ourselves of how much it would cost them if they did want to stay in a hotel overnight.
We're going to have to put a caveat on this because we've...
Other hotels are available, yes. And I'm sure it's not going to break and damage their £66,396 annual salary for the odd night stay at maybe a travel lodge or something similar. So...
But the interesting thing is, at the moment, Parliament is not convening in order to discuss what's going on in the country. Policies being set straight through the civil service and the third sector. They're certainly not turning up for debates over the abuse of children. I think there were about 20 people in the House on that occasion.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
What are they doing? Drinking and eating in the restaurants and then complaining they can't get home?
Well, and
possibly.
Other things, no doubt.
And that, of course, brings us nicely onto the subject of money.
The money. OK, so there was an article, we actually picked it up on Liberty Tactics, but Mike's found this in the Telegraph and it was also advertised in the Daily Star. And it shows that the 1% are worth approximately £67.3 trillion. And this actually amounts to 46% of the world's overall wealth. And this is according to an Oxfam report, which Mike has been looking into deeply.
Well, the Oxfam report says, that the bottom half of the world's population owns the same as the richest 85 people in the world. So that's half the world's wealth owned by just 1% of the population, and so on. I mean, what more can you say? It's not really a surprise when we've got so many people like Bill Gates and George Soros and Warren Buffett running around with their hundreds of foundations and so on. And of course, they're using all that money for philanthropic purposes, which is why there's nobody hungry in the world, and there's no wars going on, and everybody's having a happy time. So let's just look at some of the richest. I suggest everybody has a go and has a look at this. Bloomberg updates this page once a year in May. And it's just worthwhile having a look through the list. There are a few faceless people on the list, but if anybody wants to do a bit of research, it might be worthwhile going through some of these people and just looking at some of the foundations and other charitable work that they do, and just asking the question, what benefit does it have to the planet?
And these are billionaires, of course, Mike. These are billionaires.
No. So, for example, Bill Gates there, who's number one on the list, $72.78 billion. Warren Buffett, $59.78. George Soros is actually further on down the list, would you believe?
Where's Carlos Slim? Because I thought he was actually ahead of Gates.
They play ping pong with the world's richest status. It depends on the value of Microsoft shares,
And Mike, where do you think all this money's going?
No, we've just talked about it.
No, I know, but where, charitable funds, whatever. I mean, where else is it?
Look, Soros and his Open Society Foundation, what more do you need to say? Just look at the activities of that organisation and where that money's going, and how it's being used to destabilise countries.
Well, I believe the figure from George Soros Foundation is he spent, I think the year was 2011-12, it might have been 2010-11, $1.9 billion was being pumped into third sector organisations in a variety of countries. So you get George Soros in there with his money. Don't be surprised if government starts to break down.
Right, and so actually Louise asked this question earlier, and Harry Brown's asked where are the Rothschilds, and of course the Rothschilds play with other people's money. So the Rothschilds don't produce anything, whereas these guys in some way are selling something, or they're producing something, or they're doing something which is generating income, which they then spend through their foundations. But of course these guys have to invest their money, and so their money usually goes into it goes into Coutts, or it goes into various other members of the Rothschild banking cartel. So quite a lot of money is filtering through Rothschild and therefore into other things. So they're not on this list in particular. I think they're not wealthy enough. But anyway, moving on. The reason, of course, this report was released now is because it's going into the World Economic Forum, this year's Davos conference held every year in Davos, of course, in Switzerland. And they're hoping that the participants at the Davos conference are going to do something about this massive disparity of wealth. Who are the people that are going to be attending Davos? With just some of them. So who have we got here? We've got Tony Abbott, Prime Minister of Australia. He's currently chair of the G20. We've got Abe, Prime Minister of Japan. We've got King David there, Prime Minister of the UK. We've got Enrico Letta, Prime Minister of Italy. We've got Mark Carney, Governor of the Bank of England, Mario Draghi, President, European Central Bank, Haruhiko Kuroda, Bank of Japan, Thomas Jordan, Swiss National Bank, Angel Doria, General Secretary organized with OECD, Jim Yong Kim, President of the World Bank, Christine Lagarde, Managing Director of the IMF. We've got Ban Ki-moon, of course, who's Secretary General of the United Nations, Jacob Lew, US Secretary of the Treasury, Olli Rehn, Vice President of the European Commission, that's the Economic and Monetary Affairs of the European Commission, Hassan Rouhani, President of Iran, who isn't on the picture here, Shimon Peres, President of Israel, and then we've got some other illustrious people like Lloyd Blankfein, Goldman Sachs, Douglas Flint, HSBC, Anthony Jenkins, Barclays, Lawrence Fink, BlackRock, Christophe de Margerie, Total, who are fracking the country to bits at the moment, Bob Dudley, BP, more frackers, Klaus Kleinfeld, Alcoa, Doug McMillan, Walmart, Marissa Mayer, Yahoo, Joe Kaiser, Siemens, and so on. Oh, Sir Martin Sorrell and Paul I can't even pronounce his name, guy from Nestle anyway. So the usual suspects, and of course these are the usual suspects that are of course going to do lots to solve this disparity of wealth, aren't they?
Yeah.
What's the little man next to Cameron? Who's that?
Which one? That's
He looks a bit like Paul Daniels.
on the left or the right?
Trick. Well, on my right.
That is Enrico Leto, who's the Prime Minister of Italy, and the other side is Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan.
Thank you.
So I like the comment because it amuses me, but we've got a lot of swanky white suits, white men in suits there, Mike. So presumably political charity Common Purpose and Julia Middleton will be having something to say. A distinct lack of black people or anybody from the lower end of the social class.
Well, and certainly no Russians or Chinese that I can see.
No, not in favour at the moment.
No, indeed. But back home then, good news, because the Conservatives' long-term economic plan is getting more people into work, apparently. And this goes hand in hand with the upgrading of Britain's growth this year, which is wonderful. So 538,000 more people on the hamster wheel, which means they can't actually look at what's going on around them. But the question I want to ask is, what are they doing? Because, of course, they're not doing anything productive. They're not doing any kind of high-wage, high-skill jobs, the majority of them anyway. Most of them are going into the usual, as we've said many times, coffee serving and shelf stacking jobs. And this is the problem, isn't it? People are having to work so hard to try and make a living at the moment that very few are actually able to pay attention to what's going on around them.
Yeah. Mike, just a little comment on that slide itself, bottom left-hand corner there, we've got the Conservatives. It's very interesting. They're back to using the national flag to advertise the Conservative Party. So if people notice around us at the moment, there's a lot of use of images of I'll say the Union Jack, but you see it in green or pink and black.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure what's going on, we're just gently mind controlling, nudging people to get used to the fact that if Scotland goes, of course, we're going to have a different national flag. So as the Conservatives break the nation state apart, here they are coming back away from their funny little tree of knowledge, I think it is, from the magic circle, and they're focusing back now on the flag. Hypocrisy and nudging going together by the Conservatives. That's
good, yeah.
Okay, well, moving on then. HSBC still in trouble because, according to Reuters here, they're still in regulators' crosshairs over money laundering. And just a couple of points out of this article. This is mainly the United States regulators continuing to find, quotes, weaknesses in the way that HSBC prevents money laundering or tries to prevent money laundering. Of course, there are going to be weaknesses. The bank in December 2012, that was, the bank paid a fine of, what was it, $2 billion or something it was $2 billion in penalties and for failing to deal with drug money that was being laundered through the bank. But what was quite interesting from this article was that they have now hired a JP Morgan executive, Jessica Gomel, into a new position, which is Global Head of Financial Crime Compliance. So I just found that quite amusing that they're actually going to hire somebody from JP Morgan, one of the other most corrupt banks on the planet, in order to deal with their compliance with the law. I suspect what she's doing is looking for loopholes and ways around the problem. And then the article goes on to say HSBC struggles with its correspondent banking controls, have been a long-standing issue for the bank, yet like about 150 years or something. I mean, HSBC has been playing these games for centuries and has been involved in money laundering for drug cartels for centuries. So I don't see why we should expect them to behave any differently now. Any comments?
Well, at the end of the day, UK column just coming out. We're going to be strongly focusing on dealing with the international criminal banking cartel. So we've got the strong focus on the Bradbury pound. And of course, as we had in our recent broadcast, Roger Hayes and others doing extremely good works, exposing the fact that the mortgage scam is even bigger than we thought it was. as a result of this difference between lending money and the issuing of credit. So the banking cartels, if we deal with the criminality there, we're going to be well on the way to fixing not only the country but our society. And as many people have said, if we fix it in UK, it's going to start things rolling elsewhere in the world. So bankers, I think we need a lot more people focusing on exactly what is going on in the banking industry and the connections with government. So how do we improve the well-being of the nation? Well, of course, Coronation Street has done its bit here with having what they say is the saddest TV scene ever, as Hayley Cropper, whoever she is, I haven't got a clue, takes her own life.
She's actually, I think, I haven't watched it in years, but I think she's a transsexual. She's had a sex change, hasn't she not? I think I was looking at Mike.
Well, what are you asking me for?
I think, she's a transsexual who married Roy Cropper many years ago.
And it's all gone on top of her.
And I don't know the storyline, but what I do know is if she's done a suicide, there is currently, because when I'm in the car with kids, we listen to Radio 1, unfortunately, but their main news today and the last couple of days is all about suicide and to calling the helplines. And now it must be a special week or something on suicides or something, because all the media, if ITV are picking it up and the BBC are doing a little in-depth thing on suicides, etc. It must be.
Well, it's quite incredible because UK Column, with some very good people in South Wales, did our expose on all of the suicides amongst young people in South Wales. That's still continuing. What comes out of it is that young people in particular are very vulnerable to this type of play material. So what are we doing to the minds of young people in their millions who are watching this drivel from Coronation Street? What else have you got on it, Mike?
Well, I just wanted to highlight the contrasting headline from the Mail: Coronation Street and the assisted suicide that never was. Critics accuse Soap of stoking fake controversy after cancer victim Hayley ends her life without any help from Roy. And the Mail is almost complaining that Roy didn't help her in this TV drama, if you can call it that. But what is the Mail's point? The Mail seems to be increasingly trying to stoke up very strong reactions from people, and they've done the same type of thing with people on benefits, and so I'm not liking some of what the Mail's producing at the moment, I have to say.
I know on the Radio 1 thing they've really been promoting it, and on the way to school this morning there was an advert for talking about suicide. I mean, I turned it off, but then after they'd gone off I turned it back on, and yet again there was another advert promoting that teens should be looking up and listening into a show all about suicide and how many teens think about suicide. And Harry Brown's just made a really good point of, at this time of year that's a complete nudge. It is a depressing month, January, everyone's skint after Christmas. And now they're pushing all these suicide stories across the whole range, BBC, mainstream papers. It makes sense. It's all clicking into place.
It's an attack on people's minds. And this next story, something completely different, but I'm going to suggest is also an attack on our minds, because the Independent here talking about jihadists that are threatening to blow up, or have been threatening to blow up, the Belgian tourist attraction, the Atomium. So there's a play on words here. This is not an atomic bomb. This is a Belgian tourist attraction. It looks a bit like one of the old chemical models with balls joined together with sticks. Those of us who are old enough to remember chemistry many, many years ago will know what I'm talking about. But basically, we've got a story here which is saying we've now got radicalised fighters returning from Syria, and they're threatening to blow up tourist attractions in Belgium. The whole thing totally confusing now, because we've got the Western powers apparently helping Al-Qaeda, but Al-Qaeda are apparently extremely dangerous. What can you add to what's going on here, Mike?
Right. Well, I mean, we're obviously heading towards Geneva II talks over Syria, and a bit of controversy over whether Iran was going to take part. Russia was very keen for Iran to take part. Obviously, Iran is a big supporter of the Assad regime, but Russia very keen for them to take part because Iran seems to be sort of changing its policy with regard to the rest of the world, wants to get much more involved in so-called international diplomacy, Rouhani seems to be a very different prime minister to what was his name? Sorry, I can't remember the last guy's name. I did have it 2 seconds ago, but it's completely gone out of my head. But anyway, so obviously Russia a bit upset that Iran has now been excluded from the Geneva II talks, but Brooks Newmark is not upset at all because, of course, he was particularly upset that they weren't potentially going to be involved. So I just thought the language in this tweet was quite interesting. Geneva II back on track. It was never not on track because of Ban Ki-moon's what they were calling I'm losing it today, aren't I?
Just keep going. The show must go on.
Yes, indeed. Ban Ki-moon's decision to extend an invitation to Iran, kind of controversial with the likes of Brooks Newmark, but not so controversial with others. So I just thought it was interesting his use of language there, back on track.
Yeah, well, of course, this was the man who was absolutely desperate to get the attacks in. He wanted the cruise missile attacks to go in, and he was so embarrassed when it didn't happen. He said, "My goodness, what am I going to tell General Idris?" So there's a lot to be looked at around what's been going on with Brooks Newmark and other MPs. But this, of course, is just come back. Hold on here. We're having fun today. This is the story which has really hit the headlines today, a report into the credibility of certain evidence with regard to torture and execution of persons incarcerated by the current Syrian regime. Now, this story is being peddled principally by The Guardian, but also CNN. And we're extremely interested in it because we have had information over the last few weeks about the horrors going on in Syria at the moment, massive fighting, civilian casualties, a minimum of 100 a day, and the situation becoming ever more complex. And we're going to go a bit into this story, but we've really only got into it today, so we will do some more analysis. Let's see what the Mail says. Well, they go in for the heavy stuff: eyes gouged out, electrocuted, strangled, sickening dossier of 55,000 torture pictures smuggled out of Syria, which prove, here's the words again, which prove that Assad has committed war crimes. Now, our view from the information we've been getting and our research over many months now is, of course, the Assad regime has been a particularly brutal regime. But if we look at it in the same way as we might look at Iraq, that we had a situation there with a dictator in place. We were certainly seeing human rights violations. But what has happened since the West got involved? Iraq destroyed. So let's think about this as we have a look as to what's going on in the background with this
it's
one.
All right. I just noticed one of the comments in the chat room saying this is news actually coming out of Qatar, and they are behind the attack on Syria. So could this have been boosted up a bit?
We're going to have a look at that. Absolutely. We've anticipated the comments from the thing. So this is the report which The Guardian is boasting about. They've actually put a link up so that you can download it. A report into the credibility of certain evidence with regard to torture and execution of persons incarcerated by the current Syrian regime. And then at the bottom it says, prepared for Carter, Ruck and Co. Solicitors of London. Now, these are very, very powerful people, principally involved in libel, so we better make sure that our reporting today is very accurate. Otherwise, we'll have a recorded delivery letter popping through the box. So let's just go through the report. We can't cover it all, but sorry, we should have changed there. Wait a minute. Oh, here we are. Confidential. Table of contents. So we've got the members of the inquiry team. We've got an executive summary, an introduction, a mythology, evidence of Caesar. Now, Caesar is the person that's actually produced a memory stick, apparently, of 55,000 photographs of some very unpleasant bodies and mutilation of bodies, findings, conclusion, and appendices. Now, it's confidential, apparently, but to who, we don't know, because this is now widely available to the public. Here's the introduction. The member of the inquiry team travelled to the Middle East from the United Kingdom and the United States of America to discharge a mandate given to them by the firm of Carter Ruck & Co. in the City of London. So we're led to believe that Carter Ruck has magicked up the need for this team to disappear overseas. Well, it gets better than that. So have a look at the inquiry, giving the competing national and other interests in the Syrian conflict. The members of the inquiry team approached their task in the evaluation of the evidence of the defector codenamed Caesar and the photographic images with caution and an alertness to the fact that the inquiry team itself had to guard against being used as a vehicle for others to advance a particular point of view. So this is all very squeaky clean stuff, but there's a lot of questions to be asked here. So who were the team? Well, here they are. The Right Honourable Sir Desmond de Silva, QC, Chairman, former Chief Prosecutor of the Special Court for Sierra Leone, and he was appointed personally by the Secretary-General of the UN. We've got Professor Sir Jeffrey Nice, QC, former lead prosecutor of Milosevic in Yugoslavia, and Professor David M. Crane, first Chief Prosecutor for the Special Court Sierra Leone. He's another UN man.
Right.
And we've got a forensics team, Dr. Stuart J. Hamilton, a forensic pathologist, and Professor Susan Black, Professor of Anatomy and Forensic Anthropology. Got there in the end. And we've also got a chap called Stephen Cole, the Technical Director of Acumi, Forensics and Forensic Imaging. So, 55,000 images. Let's see what happened. Well, they uploaded 35 of them to a secure server at Acumi Forensics in the United Kingdom for assessment by Mr. Cole. So out of 55,000 images, they uploaded 35. It says that 26,948 images were present in various folders on the computer where the images were examined. The inquiry team was satisfied that all of those 26,948 were provided by Caesar, as were some of the other 20,000 plus images. So a tiny sample of the images are the ones that the report uses, but they're saying they're pretty confident that the others came from Caesar. Do you understand?
Yeah, totally.
Understand it so far?
They're not making sense. They impersonally understand what you're saying, but they're not making much sense.
Well, it's a law firm, so they'll be using a bit of legalese. So let's jump to the conclusions. The inquiry team is satisfied that upon the material it has reviewed, there is clear evidence capable of being believed by a tribunal of fact in a court of law of systematic torture and killing of detained persons by the agents of the Syrian government. Such evidence would support findings of crimes against humanity. Such evidence would also support findings of war crimes against the current regime. Well, do you notice not a signature?
No signature.
No signatures. Mike?
Yeah, okay, so they've looked at some images and they can say that the images have not been digitally manipulated. Is there any evidence in the report of provenance for where these images actually came from?
Well, only an anecdotal series of statements that the memory stick came from this gentleman called Caesar, who they say they verified was actually originally working as a photographer within the Syrian regime. He's come good. He's managed to escape the country. He brought his memory stick with 55,000 images. And just so that we know what we're talking about, the report is suggesting that roughly 5 images were taken of each body. So the number of people they're dealing with, they say, is about 11,000. We've no idea over what timescale. So this is a very woolly piece of research. Some of it's harrowing. I'll just put this one up on screen, but we won't do any more. In the appendices, they give some example photographs. We see a lot of people emaciated, but some of them have clearly been very seriously abused. Now, it's very interesting that at the moment, this is the information coming out of Syria. It's impossible to see any more of the images of the fighting. We can't even see the damage of some of the cities. So we thought, as usual, we'd produce one of our little network diagrams. So remember, Carter Ruck, what are they? A law firm in the City of London. Suddenly, they're in the middle of the expertise about what's been going on in Syria. And this is the bit that many of the papers are reporting, that it's Qatar who is actually in the background. Now, we've put in a picture of the new emir. We are not saying he's directly involved, hence the question mark. We're simply representing Qatar there. And this is the interesting thing, because Qatar are great supporters of the Syrian national movement, and they just happen to have supplied the information to Carter Ruck. So we seem to have a connection here, Carter Ruck, to an overseas government with, I'm going to say, a vested interest.
Yeah.
So how does it go? Well, via CSER, the Syrian National Movement provides this evidence to Carter Ruck. Carter Ruck set up a mandate. They produce a mandate in the City of London, which then sets up the inquiry team. So here's a picture of the gentleman, the Right Honourable Sir Desmond de Silva. Now, if I used the right councillor there, I might not have. This man is a Privy Councillor, so he's a British government man. He's a lawyer, but he's a British government man. Who else have we got? Well, we've got Professor Sir Geoffrey Nice. He's been involved with the International Criminal Tribunal prosecution of Milosevic. He's involved with non-government organisations, but we couldn't find out which ones. But most interestingly, he's recently done a speech in which he talks about law and lawyers becoming a new religion. So he's got some very interesting things up his sleeve. And here's the American, David M. Crane. Well, of course, he's totally independent. He's previously been involved as director of the Office of Intelligence Review, and he's also been involved with the Defence Intelligence Agency. So these are all independent people plucked out of nowhere, we're led to believe, by Carter Ruck. And then they bring in the technical expertise. So here's Stuart Hamilton, Home Office forensic pathologist. He's also worked with the Ministry of Defence, and interestingly enough, also worked with the BBC as advisor on a number of different programmes. Getting this little mixture of, Okay, here we have Susan Black, forensic anthropologist. She's also worked with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the UN in Kosovo, but also the BBC is very keen on her, and they've flagged her up as one of the one of the UK's 100 most powerful women. So, don't quite know how this works. Let's fill in the missing individual. We've got a guy called Stephen Cole here. He's Acume Forensics and Imaging. We couldn't find an image of him at all. It all appeared to be a bit secretive. So we have a libel lawyers, very powerful, dangerous. Some people describe them as being threatening. Watch out if these people come after you. They're suddenly now working for who? Qatar? Or the British government, or the BBC?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around this, and why the Syrian National Movement would be going to a British firm of solicitors.
Well, if you think about it, we've got the Syrian Observatory at the moment, of course, pumping information into UK about what's happening. Now, we're very interested in this subject. We know the situation on the ground in Syria is appalling, with massive destruction and thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people killed, injured, maimed.
Yeah.
But what is happening here, we don't know. This is the question we'd like to ask, is a very simple black and white question. Who paid? Where did the money come from for these people to go to the Middle East to meet Caesar? Who paid for the sampling? who paid for the work by Carter Ruck? Who paid?
For all those other, yeah.
And why did they pay? Well, we're going to be doing more on that over the next few days, so stay with us. But if we're talking about war crimes, we probably need to come on to this man, I think.
Yes, we do. A barman at a restaurant called Tramshed in East London attempted to arrest Tony Blair. He was dining there with friends and family when this gentleman here, Twiggy Garcia, put his hand on Blair's shoulder and said, "Mr. Blair, this is a citizen's arrest for a crime against peace, namely your decision to launch an unprovoked war against Iraq." But Blair apparently tried to engage in a debate, but one of Blair's sons actually called security. But Blair did turn around and say, "No, shouldn't you be worried about Syria?" And Garcia replied that I can only address. And he said, then he replied, "I can only address things that are within my grasp at any one time." And then Blair said, "But don't you agree that Saddam was a brutal dictator and he needed to be removed?" And Garcia replies, "Not by an illegal war." And Blair then apparently started talking about how lots of people died in the 1980s under Saddam's regime. So he ended up leaving the restaurant,
well,
Mr. Garcia.
Here he is. I thought we'd just bring him up. But of course, this man is still walking the streets.
Exactly.
But we've got this massive system now.
And this massive investigation by this law firm into what's going on into Syria. So why can't another law firm step up and get it sorted and get it organised that Mr. Blair gets tried for his crimes?
Do you think we might get Matrix Chambers to actually take it on? Perhaps we'd see a report from Matrix Chambers into bringing Tony Blair in front of a...
There is the website that this guy got inspired to do it for arrestblair.org. But, I mean, you don't need a website to do it. I think the majority of people in this country, if they saw him, should act upon it.
Well, I believe there's an £8,500 reward for anybody who will gently place their hand on Tony Blair and arrest him as a citizen's arrest.
And then we've got George Galloway's film due out soon, haven't we, that he did that big crowdfunding thing for to trial Tony Blair.
On Tony Blair. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Well, we'll finish off with a bit of home news, and you've got the EU and NHS privatisation.
OK. This article we seem to have missed, so I've got to say a big thank you to Susan for sending it over to me. And it's the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership that will be threatening the privatisation of the NHS. And according to their website, they aim to remove trade barriers in a wide range of sectors. And basically, this article is saying that it is now going to be law under the EU, where work has to be put out to tender to other countries, and that will then allow corporations to come in and bid for certain areas of the NHS. So we knew it was coming, and it looks like it's already here.
And going to speed up.
OK, and smart meters are back in the news today, and apparently hackers are using the smart meters to send mass emails and malicious spam to people. This article, it mentions the Internet of Things, which we discussed here at the column last week. And apparently, even baby monitors and meat thermometers are going to be linked up to the Internet of Things.
Yeah, so you've got a fridge.
You've got the fridge.
And it's talking to somebody else.
But hackers can now intercept their intercept the smart meter, the transmissions, and then get onto the Wi-Fi and be sending people all these malicious emails, and then they'll be tracking and putting viruses on your computers.
So your medical information gone to companies, everything to do about how you use your house.
Yeah, we haven't actually touched that story yet, I don't think, about the medical info.
Well, we'll
be coming to it, I think.
We'll get there. I just wanted to remind people, I think it was yesterday, the Daily Mail had a tiny article about Jimmy Savile. But here's the Independent. Obviously, Jimmy Savile could have abused up to 1,000 victims while at the BBC. So we've got more and more victims. We've got smaller and smaller press and media coverage, and the BBC simply ignoring the whole problem. So behind the scenes, many people now starting to really get an interest in the paedophiles at the top of the British establishment. And I had a call from a gentleman yesterday who said basically if you start to Google, well, in fact, Tony Blair's name was mentioned, but if you go and look at Google and Bow Street Magistrates Court, I think it was, pages of information, which if it's scurrilous and incorrect, surely should have been taken down. So do your own research is what we'll say to people on that.
Yep, definitely.
And I think we're going to end there because
Okay,
it's
then
been
we
a
can
pretty
talk
tough.
about this tomorrow.
We're going to say the UK column is being printed as we speak. We expect it to be distributed on Friday, I think. Is that correct, Mike?
I believe that the bulk orders will be delivered on Thursday,
right.
and we'll be posting out on Friday, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to say thank you to all our subscribers who've waited with bated breath for us to get it out.
And you've been so patient. Thank you so much.
Most of you have been very patient. A few have been a little bit.
Trying to be nice.
Of course. But we finally made it, so that's good. We've got more good news to announce in the future about what the UK column is doing. We're getting very good feedback from people. And
Can I just say my good news?
please do.
The Liberty Tactics show, which was being streamed on MSI Radio. MSI unfortunately closed down last week. And we have now joined Guerrilla Media Network, home of the Pete Santilli show, and we'll be broadcasting 5 p.m. UK time, and I think it works out at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So, and that will be starting this Friday on the Guerrilla Media Network. So,
Brilliant.
good news. Yeah,
Excellent.
Really good.
Okay, thank you all for your support. Keep watching, keep telling other people. See you same time tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.